Hi, this is Phil, and I'm here to tell you all about the Capes and Lunatics Patreon. Get early access to all of our interviews, including the monthly Chichester chats with writer and comic book legend D.G. Chichester, new episodes of classic Capes and Lunatics shows, including The Quantum Zone, This, That, or the Third, and many, many more specials, all completely uncensored. Access starts for $3 a month, full video when you pledge $5 a month. Check out the link in our show notes or go to patreon.com/capesandlunatics. Hope to see you there. Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Capes and Lunatics. I am Phil, no Charlie, no Lilith, but Will is here, who you know.
Hey everyone.
Because we have another very special guest, Mr. Jeremy Adams. Hello, sir.
Hello. I love that there's a Mister in there. If I didn't feel old enough.
Hey, we're all old men here, you know, don't.
Yeah.
All right, so I wanted to, both Will and I mean, we do a Green Lantern podcast, so of course we wanted to see what information we could get out of you about the upcoming Green Lantern series. But I also wanted to thank you for the Flash series. I've been reading your Flash series. Excellent, every issue. I was about to say every month, but right now it's every 2 weeks for the 1 Minute War, which is very good.
Well, thank you.
And I kind of figured, I did my homework. I see you have 2 children, because just reading the Wally West family, I'm like, this man has children. And
It's ripped from the headlines. Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. Yeah, it's weird that it's coming to an end in my mind, because as everybody knows, I was like, I will ride this thing into the ground. And I had plenty of other stories and things I wanted to do, but them's the breaks. They ain't my toys, Yeah. But I had so much fun. I'm kind of reflecting on the run and the different things that I really got away with. So much murder, There was a byproduct of Warner Brothers going through so many weird hiccups and changes that allowed me, I think, to stay on as long as I was able, and also to just be able to experiment, because up until about 2 years ago, I had never written a comic, and it was something I've always wanted to do. I mean, don't get me wrong, my father drew comic books, and so that was always, a few of them, not like a lot, but that was always a safe place for him and I to communicate. So it was always something I desperately wanted to be involved in, and it's funny how I came about it the exact opposite way everybody else wants to go about their career in writing, and I was so I remember after the meeting with Dan Didio where he got a bunch of animation writer names, and we're in a room and he's talking about 5G, and we leave and I'm just high as a kite. Like I really am just like, oh my gosh, this is it. I've been trying to write a comic for ages and they're going to let me. This is insane. And I remember walking into a bar where a couple of my friends are, and they were really like, I don't know, should we do this? And I was like, if someone asks you if you're a god, you say yes. I was like, are you insane? Of course we're going to do this. And then it was like, and then Dan left, and I was like, oh no, this is my chance, And then I got to do a couple of the Future State backups, because that 5G kind of morphed into Future State. And then suddenly Mike Cotton, who was editor at the time, called me up. It's like, hey, do you want to... I found out I was not the first choice, and it was like, hey, do you want to do the Flash? You got any ideas for the Flash? I'm like, I got ideas. Buddy, I'm a man of a certain age. I've got a lot of ideas about comic books, And then he was like, you can do the Flash. It was just so blasé. I was like, all right, and then just really getting to go kind of cuckoo bananas a little bit, and having so much fun doing it, and working with incredible artists. And and this is the thing, like Flash wasn't the book that I grew up with. Like I read some of it, but I was reading, X-Men, Hulk, Captain America, Daredevil. I was reading Batman, Detective Comics, a lot of Young Justice, a lot of Nightwing, Robin. The Chuck Dixon editorial office was super cool to me. The Cassandra Cain Batman, all the Birds of Prey, everything by Gail Simone. Like I was deep into all of that stuff, and Flash was there, and I read some of it. I read some Mark Waid, and I've read, if you're a comic fan, you just read whatever's in front of you, and I've read a bunch of stuff. So when I got the job, it was like, oh man, there's almost 800 issues of continuity I got to somehow figure out, and really dig deep in. And I'm so grateful to, Marvel or DC Infinite is great to catch up. Wikipedias are great. Fans have been unbelievably cool and making, listen, one of the only reasons Harley came back into the book was because fans were just like, where's Harley? In a way. And by the way, I'm rambling. So when you tell me,
oh no. I mean, people are here to hear you, not us. Yeah, but
exactly.
So one of the things that obviously the way I designed how I was going to write the book was that opening arc was really about me getting used to Wally's voice and figuring out who Wally was for me to write him. And then I kind of expanded it in terms of, I want to bring in the kids, and then I want to bring in Linda, and just kind of expand those roles, or expand them in terms of it's me building it out and making it a bigger book in terms of the family orientation of it. And then bringing in Barry a little more, bringing in Jay a little more, and bringing in Max and Liberty. And then it's all kind of like gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, so that by the time we get to 1 Minute War, we're all on the same page. And with Harley, it was like, oh, he's a critical member of this family in a way. And everybody's missed him for a long time. That's the other thing about writing this book that's been so much fun, is like no one's kind of like batted an eye when I'm like, hey, can we bring Eclipso in here and maybe Justice League Dark? Like, obviously I was just throwing characters in, like, hey, what's anybody doing with Power Girl right now? Like no one was stopping me with like Dr. Fate or whatever. And I'm like, this is great, because when I was a kid and I picked up a book and there was multiple characters in there, I'm like, oh, this is amazing, So that's kind of, and I felt like, maybe this was just the outside looking in, but I felt like it would help the cohesiveness of the DC universe a little bit.
Yeah,
to have those characters interact, and we're all part of one world. We're all doing these things at the same time, and because Dark Crisis was like, it was Dark Crisis and the Flash, like Dark Crisis spin-off books and the Flash, but it wasn't really happening in some other books. And so when I was talking to Josh, and he's like, you can use whoever you want. But I also tied it into like Jay bullying, Roy about his hat, and, Power Girl learning the thunderclap from, or Jay learning the thunderclap from Power Girl and stuff like that. Stupid stuff that I'm just having, like, and then I'm like, wow, yeah, I'm going to put Clarion the Witch Boy in there because, Gregory Wolfe is the Lord of Order. Like, and by the way, and if you're new to comics, you're like, what is happening? Like, I don't even know what's happening, But if you've been reading as long as we have, you're like, oh, Lords of Order. Yeah, that's a thing.
I was going to say, the biggest compliment, I've been reading Wally West since the early 90s, and yes, good job. It fits right in. I'm never like, oh, hey, what's this guy doing? No, it fits right in with everything, and I know.
Well, I'm a bit of a continuity whore in a lot of ways. Like,
yes,
me too. Like, I'm that guy that if it doesn't make sense, I kind of want it to make sense.
Yes. And
that was kind of some of my plans for later. Was I wanted to fix a lot of things. Like, even by the way, like tiny things, like things that no one else cares about, but I'm sitting there going like, oh, that just bothers me. And mistakes that were made in publishing. Like it was like, oh, this was colored wrong. I'm like, we should fix that in continuity.
Nice. And again, I'm sad to see you go too. 800 is going to be your last issue, but I see you got to work with. You're going to get to work with Mark Waid.
Yeah. So it was funny. Like I don't know. It was like last year. I said, listen, issue 800 is going to come up quicker than we think. When I started, my goal was to make it to 800, and I'm so glad I did. And then, of course, my brain started moving past 800. But for issue 800, I really wanted it to be a celebration of the Flash, and I really wanted to bring in all those guys that have made such a big. It's not totally altruistic, by the way. It's like I want, I've now worked with Jeff, and I know him, and I really like him, and so getting Jeff on board and getting Josh is up for it, and Josh is awesome too. And then I found out Mark is like a neighbor of mine. He lives a couple blocks away. And the way I met Mark was he was doing a signing in a comic book store down the shop. And it was like a Saturday. And I was just scrolling through Twitter. And I see this thing like, come by, blah, blah, blah. And, meet Mark Waid. And I was like, holy crap. I like grabbed my keys. And like, I don't even know if I said bye to my family. And I was like, I'll see you later. And I'm driving. And I get there and I kind of go, hi, Mr. Wade. I'm Chris Farley. And that's the whole sketch. Like, hi, Mr. Wade. My name is Jimmy. I'm a big fan. And he was like, oh my gosh, I love what you're doing in the Flash. And I was like, you do? And so then we had lunch, and we've had lunch a couple times. And what a super cool guy. Cool guy. And so because I feel like Mark especially, I feel like he's contributed, I don't know if it's the most, but probably the most to the Flash universe. Speed Force, all sorts of, familial things. And he's a veteran, and I'm a newbie. And so getting able to have lunch with him and hear any war stories or any ideas and like, suggestions or whatever is amazing. So all that being said, I was like, oh man, wouldn't it be great to do an 800 with all those guys on board? And at first there was a little resistance to it, I think. I don't know why, but I was like, no, we got to do this, And then it was like, yeah, of course we're doing this. Of course we thought of this idea. Like, well, I don't care. Like, let's just do it. We want a big issue 800 with all these amazing Flash writers.
But he also, he must love you, because I know I've talked to him before, and I think he was just under the impression a lot of fans or some of the people at DC didn't like Wally's family, and like you're taking such a good care of them. I mean, he must love,
Yeah, it's a weird. When I first started, I always said that Wally was a piñata, and I was like, I promise you, I won't hit the piñata. Like as long as I'm writing, like he's gonna be okay. And that was kind of the promise that I made up front. And it was very specific because how do you say this? It's a weird thing because we're dealing with fictional characters, obviously. Yeah. And but the way that I think of heroes are they're heroes. And I actually, when I come to a comic book a lot of times, especially as a kid, it's like, I wanted to read about heroes. That's not to say that there's not a place for anything edgy or whatever. I just feel like there's a lot of that. And so I wanted to do something a little different. And I wanted to do something that was going to be very, like, my daughters could read this book. It's very, like, there's action and adventure and stakes, but there's also, it's kind of family oriented. And I really wanted to move Wally into this kind of, like, weird, Incredibles, Fantastic Four-y land where it was like, oh, look at this family that can do all these things. And to me are maybe the most powerful beings in the universe, and I've touched on it a couple times in the book, but Wally, especially because, like I said, because I'm a continuity whore and I've seen him come back from non-existence and ride Metron's chair and help knit the universe together. I'm like, man, that guy knows some stuff, and that's his ultimate empathy. And then his love is grounding with his wife and kids. So, my big goal was to have fun, but also to leave it where I've added more toys to the toy box, and that people that love the Flash love him more, and they love Wally more, and they love that, and kind of the undercurrent is that is like solidify that you can't kill him again. There's a little of that, right? Like there's an undercurrent of like we did all this stuff, and if you kill him, whatever happens to you is on you.
Yeah, he's kind of up there in like Nightwing territory, where like it's like you can't touch him, and he's as popular, if not more, than the guy who came before him. Yeah,
right. Yeah, I mean, listen, I've had such a blast, and I mean, if you're a comic fan, it's like I've been able to add characters like villains and heroes and intergalactic space wrestlers. Like I just been able to like add, and I didn't want to do like here's 1,000. I wanted to do them like every so often, add a character, and that's awesome. I got to add a character to the DC Comics. Like I'll never see money from it, but I love that.
And I know a lot of people say, like, I know, like, you've written for TV shows and animated series and movies. People say, like, comics is, like, writing a comic is like its own animal. It's so completely different than any other writing for anything else.
Yeah, it is. It's not, it's more close, in my mind, closely resembles animation than live action does. So when I was on Supernatural, so I would, for people that don't know, I wrote primarily animation for years. First thing being Green Lantern the animated series. That was my first credit, and Bruce Timm was an executive producer on that, and Jim Krieg was the showrunner. Giancarlo Volpe, like some incredible people were involved in that. That was my first foray into animation. It was spectacular, a great series, as we were just talking about. It was something that it was concurrent with Young Justice. The way that Jim and those guys and Ernie Altbacker and all those guys put that together was so very clever. And Bruce Timm, just curated that as well. I mean, it was a thrill to be a part of, because I still think it holds up, and I still think it's going to hold up. I think it's just going to increase in, valuation as people keep like discovering it in a way. Mm-hmm. I think people were turned off by the CGI back in the day. I think it was like one of the first times that kind of like style. It was like, it was like the Bruce Timm style, but it was done like this. And people were a little like put up, but it's such a mature almost retelling of Green Lantern, and they flipped some things on the head. Whatever. Anyway, animation is super collaborative. And when you write animation, or at least when I write animation, I look at it as kind of like an outline for the artists, the storyboard guys, and the supervising producer, and the different people that come after it. So there's a lot of directing on the page. Sometimes the artists use the directing, sometimes they don't, but it doesn't matter. Like you have to kind of direct. So each page is a little longer than it would be in live action. And I would oftentimes just choreograph total fight scenes and like, okay, the camera's going to do this. And you would write certain things depending on who you're working for. But generally that's been my experience. And then I go over to Supernatural, and I'm doing an episode where there's a huge fight scene, and I choreographed the entire fight scene on the page. And the executive producer's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, we got a guy for that. Like, don't write that. Just write fight scene. I was like, okay. Like, I don't know. And so comic books are much more, in my mind, like animation in a way, because you're definitely directing, not that I have any right to be directing, like I can barely dress myself. So I'll put panels and I'll really try to give the description of what I want. And when you find an artist that gets what your language you're talking, it's a really great thing. I think that's why I really enjoy working with Fernando Pasarin so much, because he pluses everything I do. He really understands kind of how I'm envisioning it. But like in Green Lantern, it's Zermanico, and Zermanico will say, I see what you're doing here. I think we can do it a better way. And I'm like, you are the artist, and you are way better than I. And this is a visual medium, and I want the artist. Some of my goals. Sometimes I get a little wordy and stuff, but most of my goal is like, I want that artist not only to be elevated and feel beloved, but like and have ownership. But I also want him or her to feel excited about drawing it. Excited about what they're drawing, instead of being like, ugh, here's another talking scene or whatever, It's like I want them to be excited about oh, Jeremy put in a 90-foot lizard monster with like Twinkies for fingers or whatever. It's like I wanted to be like, this is crazy. I'm gonna go with it, and I've had moments like that. Amonkhe on the Dark Crisis tie-in. It's like when I was writing the Wasteland Barry, the Mad Max Barry, and he started sending back pictures of the cars. And you could tell he was having so much fun with the cars. I was like, this is awesome. It was just so awesome. And so it's like, well, we got to make sure we can do some more cars, But I'm not perfect at it. And I still feel like I have so much I'm learning. On Flashpoint Beyond, Jeff had he has a very particular way that he writes, and a very particular way that he wants to do things in terms of like page turns and stuff like that. That I'm like, oh my gosh, like, how am I not? Of course I'm going to listen to him. And of course I'm going to take that and try to, as my mom says, chew the hay and spit out the sticks, It's like, take what works and then leave the rest. And that's what I've been trying to do. So I mean, it's a weird thing because with Flash, we didn't start out with a number one. It kind of just appeared. And then word of mouth has been so great, and fans have been so great, and it's been fun to see people kind of find it and rediscover it. And there's still people that don't know Wally is the Flash, like they have no idea. And it feels like a groundswell in a way. And so when we started selling out 1 Minute War stuff, I was just like, I was over the moon. And it sucks to leave. Like I'm so sad about it, but when you're leaving with that much love, you can't really be bitter or anything. Yeah. You're just like, wow, man, this is incredible.
Yeah, no, because I mean, the story's been good. Your artists have, the art's been good on every issue, covers, everything. I think that's the only thing. It's like there's good word of mouth. I mean, especially it probably helps that there's a Flash TV show, a Flash movie coming, but it's Barry in all of those. So it's like, you got to get the word out about Wally.
Yeah, that's always an interesting thing. Anytime you deal with the IP of any sort, it's kind of a weird, it's a weird animal. I mean, I worked for Lego and obviously Warner Brothers a lot, and sometimes there can be mandates that come down on, covers and stuff like that. When I was doing Lego superhero stuff, our Lego superhero stuff. So I had done this this Flash animated Lego movie, and then I did Aquaman animated Lego movie and a Shazam animated Lego movie and like another Batman animated Lego. But those were all supposed to come out like concurrently with the Flash movie and the Shazam movie and the Aquaman movie, and then immediately the live action stuff got so out of whack with what they just started releasing them, and they're still really fun, peculiar little. There's one joke that I wish I'm so sad we didn't get in the Flash, Lego Flash one, which was Reverse Flash, who is played by Dwight Schultz, Murdoch from the A-Team.
And Next Generation.
That's exactly, yeah.
Yes.
And he's Reverse Flash, and he walls in. The joke was that the Justice League says we have to quit because the Reverse Flash, nobody knows he's bad, and the Reverse Flash knows it. And so what we had to cut out was that they get a job at the Mall of Justice, and they. And my favorite part was like Batman had a smoothie stand. And this kid like gets a drink, and she's like, "This is disgusting." And he's like, "Of course it's disgusting. It has all the vitamins and minerals you need. With none of the like, it's just like this like practical, drink that tastes horrible, but of course it's good for you." So funny.
All right, we're 20-some minutes in. Will, I know Will was chomping at the bit to ask some Green Lantern questions. So go ahead, Will.
Yeah, he has a ring.
Well, I do have a ring back there. We were talking a little bit about Green Lantern, the animated series, and I'd mentioned that I had kind of my sons. I'm old. I'm really old, and my sons were a little too old for the series when it came out. We did go see the movie together, and were extraordinarily disappointed in the movie. But just like during the pandemic, I'm like, I remember watching like the first episode or something. Let's put this on, and it stands up so well. I mean, and it's just such a gorgeous series that I'm like, who cares if it's selling action figures? Why is this not still on? Right?
Yeah. I mean, that was the thing. It was like the live action movies did so poorly that you know, they dumped the series, because like, yeah, but we got these action figures, and they're like, yeah, we've got a bunch of landfills with Ryan Reynolds' face on it, you know. That's like, because the marketing guys and toy guys, they don't know the difference. They're like, that says Green Lantern and that says Green Lantern, like it's the same thing, you know. It's too bad.
Yeah, I love the animated series. Just, it's so great, and I'm glad I got to come back to it and watch it. And I talk. My sons are 27 now, so you know, we'll even talk about it.
You had those kids like illegally? What's up?
I'm 51, dude.
Oh, bro, come on, come on. You don't look good. You put that pearl cream on your face. What's happening?
I'm losing my hair, which is why I wear the hat.
Why do you think I got a cap on?
So, you know, we'll talk about the series now, and it's really great to just, you know, they've come, you know, they're 20 somethings now, and they're like, yeah, this is awesome. And, you know, I'm like, I'm old, and I'm like, yeah, it is awesome. Let's talk about it, because it's really cool. Let's watch it, you know.
Yeah, Jim and those guys, like, it's so good, and they would find so much glee in trying to figure out how to turn the knife, you know, and really, and I think that's what's so fun about that series in particular, is you're watching the show, and you're thinking, oh, maybe this, like, it looks like it's going to be a kid's show.
Yeah.
And then there's these, like, I mean, the Razor Aya romance, like, subplot is so intense. And then it gets so dark, and you're like, oh my gosh, you know, and it's just really clever show. I really, really loved it.
Yeah. And you did, it was a couple episodes in the second half of the run.
Yeah. They Jim's my mentor and boss, and he gave me my first shot, and it was kind of this really crazy, you know, God thing, honestly. and I've told this story before, but like the way that I got into the industry was really peculiar. You know, sorry, this is like a weirdly religious story, but bear with me. There was a Doctor Who group. Because I'm a nerd. It was when Chris Eccleston took over Doctor Who, and this guy was getting bootleg copies from England, and so we'd meet and we would watch it, and that's how I really got to meet Jim. And Jim was like, "What do you want to do?" And I was like, "I want to be a writer." And Jim's like, "I'm a writer." I'm like, "Sure you are." And I remember letting him read something of mine, and he came and he's like, "This is crap, but like the good kind of crap," you know. Like, oh, thanks. Thanks for your support, you know. And I've been out here for a long time, you know, busting my butt trying to make a go of it, and doing a lot of assistant work, working at, you know, whatever. Anyways, I was at church one day, and they gave a sermon on the Moses and the burning bush. And I was like, I need a burning bush. Like, I need something to specifically tell me what I need to do. And my wife's like, well, you should pray about it. I'm like, I don't know. Okay. You know, and I did. And because my wife knows all. And the next day I get a call from Jim, and he goes, I know this is weird, but I was praying last night, and I feel like God wants me to be your mentor. And I want to put you on my show, but I need you to do this, this, and this. And I was like, okay. You know, and I kind of had to jump through hoops that he later told me he did just to see if I'd jump through hoops. And and I got this job, and I turned in the script, and I got these notes back, and they're really funny notes. It was like, Giancarlo wants to put you know, like a worm, like a space worm or earthworm in this episode. I was like, what? Like, what do you mean a space worm? And Jim was giving me some really good advice. He goes, listen, if he wants Hal Jordan to have a talking mustache, you're going to write the best talking mustache ever. That's your job. And I was like, okay. So I put the worm in. Second episode I do, script comes back, and similar note. I want to put some space sharks in here, like space sharks. Is this guy watching like Nature Channel? What's happening? So I write it in. And then I go watch the episodes when they come out, like 2 years later. And I'm like, darn it, if those things didn't need a worm, and that didn't need a space shark. Like, there's something, like, he's so visually minded and smart that he was probably like, you know, it needs this thing. Whatever this thing is, it needs it. And he knew better. And that was my first taste of the reality of a collaborative medium, where you really have to trust the people involved in it. And when they say, hey, I feel like we need this thing, you need to look at that and see if that's true. And as a writer, especially at that level, you don't even have to see if it's true. You just go, you got
do it.
You know, yeah.
Nice.
But yeah, that's how I got my start and it was with Green Lantern, you know. And I had a pretty extensive collection of, it was John's and Tomasi's. It was like Green Lantern, Green Lantern Corps were such good companion pieces.
Oh yeah.
And I love that. Those two at the same time was just really, really cool as it led up to, you know, all the different colored things. And, you know, it just expanded in this giant space opera. But at the time, it was really cool. I love Guy Gardner because I'm such a Justice League International fan. And he was just such a jerk, but I loved it. And seeing them in that series make him a pacifist for as long as they did was just insane. It was just insane. It's sort of like in Marvel when they took the Hulk out. He's at Planet Hulk for like a year or more, and I was like, this is insane. Like, you know, but with Guy Gardner, it was just hilarious because he was gone. Yeah. I mean, he was such a nice guy for so long, and then he comes back and he's a super jerk. And I'm like, this is probably my two favorite covers of comic book is the one with Guy or Lobo over Guy, and the next one is Guy over Lobo, and I'm like, that's it, you know?
Yeah. Nice.
Just keeps getting hit on the head. He's like, yeah.
Oh, so good. And I remember reading. It was like, I don't know if it was the first couple issues, but when they see the Rocket Reds, and he starts singing the Star Spangled Banner as he goes off, and he's just like wailing. I'm like, hell yeah, Guy Gardner! Show them commies. Like I was like, this is awesome. You know, Blue Beetle is Ted Kord's like, where's Guy going? You know, it was just so funny and so weird, and I love that. But Green Lantern, back to Green Lantern. It's like this interesting thing because they told me that I was going to be off of the Flash, and then they asked me to take on Hal Jordan Green Lantern, and they kind of had specific things they wanted to kind of adhere to in a way. They like want him to be much more like on Earth and a couple other things. And I'm like, yeah, but there's got to be a reason. You know, the DC nerd brain is like, well, there's got to be a reason he's on Earth. You know, this must make sense within my continuity in my brain. So I started like coming up with what I think is the story, and I said, hey, I think it should be this, and Paul was very amenable to it. And then you have Zermanica, who just everything he draws is amazing. So I think with the Green Lantern, the thing, I guess the thing I'm worried about and I'm excited about is that it's monthly. So this story is going to unfold. It's not going to be like, and this is why this is, Sector 2814 is quarantined. Mm-hmm. And so I'm worried about that. I'm worried. I both need to have the patience to unravel that slowly, but I'm also a comic book guy who's like, all right, let's go. This is this is $5 a book, and we're 6 months in. I need answers. Like I don't like that. I don't like. It's been a year and we don't know what's going on. Like that's not me. That's not what I want to do. I want to tell a story in the length of time that I can, but not make it so long that people are upset at me, and so I can get on to other stories, get on to fun stuff. I really enjoyed kind of finding the Hal that I want to write, and he's very much like a cross between, he's kind of Maverick, Han Solo, Captain Kirk, and he's very confident, and he's very like, but he's also, I also don't think I don't think he's a dick that everybody thinks he is, and I actually think. Here's a guy who's led, saved the universe, led soldiers into battle in a way, and also, as with Wally, experienced something really, really traumatic. But he has the ability to overcome great fear, and that's the singular thing I keep going back to him. Whereas Wally is very empathetic and gone through a lot of trauma, I think Hal Jordan is maybe not as empathetic, but he's overcome a lot of trauma by sheer will, and that makes him stronger for it. And so I think he is unbelievably formidable. I still think I don't think he's, like I said, I don't think he's a jerk. And I think sometimes that's how people write him, as a jerk. And I don't want that to be the case. I want him to be charming and nice and, Don Johnson from Miami Vice or something. I don't know. I mean, just cool. You want him to be cool. You want him to be the guy that, like, when he's talking to Carol, he's super confident about it. And not like, I mean, maybe my favorite movie is probably Big Trouble in Little China. So I'm not going to say he's Jack Burton level, but like he's that certain type of confidence where it's just like, it is Hansel. Like I'm other men, it's that, and he's experienced something that we're not going to know right away. And that is going to be a cool thing that I think as fans that we get to uncover, and that will lead into greater mysteries. And then what's cool thing about the book is even if you hate my issue, you get to stick around for Philip Kennedy Johnson. So, it's like...
That was going to be one of my questions. I was like, are you in contact with him? So are you guys coordinating? You're like, oh, are you going to use this or are you going to use this?
So I've told Philip kind of what I'm doing, and he has what he's doing with John, and his stuff is super cool. It's one of those things I'm like, gosh, dang it. No, it's really good. And more than that, as far as I've only met him briefly once, and we've had some conversations, and incredibly humble, incredibly nice. And so far everything's been really wonderful in terms of they're not like coordinated because he has a story he's telling with John. But I do think, and I think what I want, and I think what fans want, is at some point I would, these things need to dip into each other. But I think that's what the Dawn of DCU is trying to do at its base level, is have a concentrated focal point for each hero so that fans can jump on board. I think the last couple of years, and I don't want to lay the blame at like DC's fault, but Warner Brothers has been like, blah, 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 so I think there's been so many editorial changes and so many, like, you've seen the reports about the layoffs, and it's like, there's a skeleton crew manning this big ship, and people are trying to figure it out. And I have to give huge kudos to Josh Williamson, because he really, the Dark Crisis, I think, was the result of him trying to pull. He's Spider-Man in Tobey Maguire in front of that, that subway.
Train.
The train is like, I think there's some of that there, and so I feel like, I think people are feeling that too, is that with Action Comics #1 and what's happening with Nightwing and, Titans and all that stuff, there's this kind of like, okay, we're focusing on these things and we're focusing on these pillar characters. And then off of those pillar characters, depending on, it all comes down to sales. It's always funny to me. It's something that I talk about sounding like a fuddy-duddy, but it's true, because I come from the animation world, and I can't tell you how many times that people will lash out online about how, why don't we have more movies that star this character? And it's like, well, you didn't buy it when we did it.
Yeah.
And most of you pirate it, which is terrible. I don't want to be the guy like, hey, you guys are stealing, but you're stealing. It's like you are contributing to the problem. Like when I tell you Marvel Unlimited and DC Infinite are not that expensive. Like you could contribute to the ability of these books that you love that no one reads. Like, a lot of people are like, oh, I love this. Why did they cancel this? Because they're selling 10,000 copies. You know what I mean? Like, because all you guys stole it.
That's the example I always use. I'm like, you have to vote with your dollars and cents. I'm like, if like these companies knew, I mean, I always use the example over at Marvel. It's like, if they knew they were going to sell 1 million copies of it, they would give you Hulk and a tutu every month if they thought they were going to sell 1 million copies of it.
Yes. And by the way, the difference between them canceling a book and them not canceling the book is so slim.
Oh, really?
It's so like, you're talking like 1,000, 2,000 copies of a comic. And it's just like, I I understand why they don't do this, but you kind of wish they would tell you how much each is selling, so that you could sit there and go, crap. You know, they're gonna cancel this thing, and we need to get people to buy it, because that's really, I think that's the math. That's the math of all these things. It's like, okay, this isn't selling as much as we want, or we know what happens when it drops below this. It means that the book is on its way out, and we have to start planning accordingly. And again, not my toys, big business, etc. But it happens with animation too. It's like, oh, why don't you guys do anything besides Batman? It's well, because every time we do, you know, no one buys it. You know, it's like, why do you think there's 12 Batman books out? I agree, it's weird, but it is what it is.
Okay, so, I'm not going to ask you a. I'm going to ask you a yes or no question, because I don't. You can ask me any question you want.
I'm savvy. Let's do this.
He might not be able to answer it, but yes.
DC Nerd Brain.
Yep.
At the end of Jeffrey Thorne's run.
Yep.
There are no Guardians.
Yep.
There's no Malthusians. There's no Controllers. And yet Sector 2814 is quarantined by the Guardians.
Yep.
The question is, will that be explained?
I would bet this continuity horror is going to answer some of these questions eventually.
Now it will. No. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like what you just told me, there's a certain amount of me trying to figure out what the continuity is, even in the Flash, and I get varying answers. So,
well, it's kind of hard too, because there has been no Green Lantern series for like a year now.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But what you said is like, that's the type of thing that gets me thinking, you know?
Yeah.
And it gets me going like, okay, this is interesting. Like I want to, it's exactly what I said. I don't like the holes. I want to make sure that things are filled in. And I also don't want to step on other creators' story either, you know? Because I think that Thorne probably had a bigger story that he was trying to tell. And so, you know, those are also conversations. It's like, oh, okay, I got to fill this in somehow, but I also don't want to step on somebody's toes. And listen, I'm still wondering what happened at the end of Millennium when the Xamaron you know, disappeared, and there were these characters that were supposed to be really important. Like, you know, like there's stuff that's still lingering.
So Phil and I do Sector 2814 podcast, and we're rereading Green Lantern from 1990 up.
Holy cow!
Yeah, we're pretty much going in order.
We're up to what, like 160 right now. So
we're like at the end of Judd Winnick's.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And the Zamarans show up, and we're like, "Hey, what happened with this?" Because Nerd Brain, we're like, "They came back, but then where are they? We don't see them again until you know, Rebirth." So I'm with you, man.
Exactly.
Oh, okay. Never mind. That brings up a big question. All right, I don't know if you can answer this or not, but are we going to see my favorite Green Lantern, Kyle Rayner?
Not
right away.
For me right now. I got so much of the when is Kyle going to hang out with Wally?
Oh yeah.
And I very early on like, hey, can Kyle hang out with Wally? And they're like, no. You know?
Really?
It's like, fine. You know, there's not yet. But that's what I'm sorting out a little bit. You know, because I also want people to follow it. You know, I also want people to understand what's going on. And this isn't being mean, but I don't think there's a lust for that particular aspect of nerddom with some people as much as like I want everything to make sense. Like, you know what I mean? Like, Amanda Waller's back. I'm like, wait, I don't understand. She's trapped in Earth 3. Like, you know, like I want to know. You know, I'm typing Josh, like, what happened? You tell me what happened right now, you know?
Okay, so I don't know if you can answer this either, but you said Hal's going to be, you know, it's going to be a lot on Earth. So are we just going to see Hal in your stories? I know Philip's going to have John Stewart, but are we just going to see mostly Hal as Green Lantern Hal? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you have so many great characters. You know, just the Earth Lanterns. You know, you've got the classics with, you know, Hal and Guy and John, and then Kyle. The newer ones with Jessica and Simon. Yeah. And then, you know, really, you know, Joe is really interesting from Far Sector. You know, which is just from, you know, a couple years ago, and that's just the the Earth Lanterns, and then you've got Kilowog, who's great. You've got Salak. You've got all of these great alien characters that have been, in the book since even before I was born, a long time ago. Okay, so I mean, you've got such a giant box of toys,
right? and maybe I don't, and we're going to see how it plays out. But I mean, the fact is, 2814 is quarantined in this particular thing, so those Earth Lanterns aren't going to be there, and it presents some unique problems. And it's also like, well, why is Hal there? And how does Hal have a ring? Because it's quarantine. You're not allowed to have a Green Lantern there. And I also want to talk about why there's so many Green Lanterns in Sector 2814, the problem child of all sectors. And I think what's great is what John has going, or what Philip has going on, and what I think some of the backup issues are going to talk about as like other characters and doing other things. What happens when the police says, okay, we can't patrol that area, so we're going to move you over here. We're going to have you do this or do that. That's going to be a piece of it. I think it's going to be interesting. And with Hal, again, there's a mystery about it all and stuff that has led to this moment. And I just didn't want to, they really wanted it to be kind of Earthbound, but I really wanted it to be Earthbound wrapped in a mystery. And that's part of his character journey too. It's like, he's been gone for a long time.
Oh yeah.
And the woman that he loves, has moved on in a way. And it's like, because I'm not waiting around for you, like that's the kind of thing. And I think everybody kind of understands that. And that's the push and pull of that relationship a little bit. And I mean, listen, it's very soapy, in terms of like especially what's fun is because I am absolutely like, it's a miracle that my wife married me. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I am the worst. Yeah. It's like, she talked to me. Like, it's, it was a miracle thing. So it's kind of fun to write somebody, and maybe I'm writing them terribly, but it's fun to write somebody that's absolutely confident in that arena too, because it's like, he's super confident. He's doing the things that I wish I could be super confident. I'm not intimidated by blah, 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 but he is, because it's this woman that he has such history with. And so again, it's me digging in and finding out so much about what's going on in the Green Lantern universe, but also tying it to a bigger mystery. And the cool thing, I think, the way that we're constructing the series is not only are you going to get some soapy stuff, but Zermanica's so good at the action stuff and how beautiful it is. And then I really have in mind that I don't want to just do constructs. It's like, oh, he does a bow and arrow, and he does a boxing glove. It's like, I'm really, and I know people have done it better than I have, but I'm really trying hard to have him use constructs in a unique way. And also him using his powers, like certain powers that he's had in the past that maybe they don't talk about much anymore. Sort of. You'll have to see, because it's really like, I don't know. We'll see.
Okay, well, here's a philosophy question for you.
Okay.
The Corps has always been presented as, policemen.
Yes.
I feel like they were kind of mirroring America a bit and became a bit more militarized.
Sure.
In the past. I mean, I know there's still mileage in that metaphor as a policeman, but do they need to move? Do you feel like they need to move beyond that, and maybe police isn't the best thing for them to be after, the years that we've just lived through at some point?
I think that's an interesting philosophical question. I also think it's interesting because Hal didn't join up. You know what I mean? Like, he was chosen, and he has a military background, depending on which continuity you're dealing with, but he does have a military background. And I think the greater good of, patrolling the universe and doing good is great. Like, that's great. But you're also talking about unelected bureaucrats that are meddling and blah, 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 potentially all that stuff. So there's the Superman of it, right? Like, why don't they just all go quest for peace and start, where's the prime directive in this scenario? I think there's some of that. I think what I'm playing with Hal in terms of, I think one of the things that I've caught on about Hal that I really love is that he isn't just, I'll take orders and do what you want. He's definitely a little more cantankerous than that, because he's seen so much too.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the philosophy of the core, it's hard because I'm thinking more Earthbound right now,
Mm-hmm.
and I know at some point I'm going to be thinking about the core, and I'm in a different sense because I'm not one of those people. I do think that police are a valuable, important aspect, but there's also regulations and all sorts of other things involved in that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, man. I mean, it's a funny thing because it's also just like somebody put that together. Like, I mean, it makes real sense at a high level. It's like, oh yeah, they're the police.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. It's a really easy metaphor.
Right. But it's like, but what are they? They're not ticketing people for parking. It's like, it's really for bigger issues, and who signs on for that and who doesn't sign on for that. I always think about it like, man, like who joined the Federation of Planets? Like, is it some people are just like, hey, we want to be under the Guardians rule rather than, nope, you're part of it. Sector, blah, blah, blah. You're in. We don't want to get in. I don't know. I think all of that is interesting stuff to talk about, but I also think at its best is when the people that are part of the core are doing this for the right reasons. Mm-hmm. But I'm also trying to do something different in terms of my run, because all the colored lanterns and all the emotional spectrum and all of the Blackest Night and all that stuff, that's been done. Mm-hmm. I think I would be really stupid to try and
part two.
Yeah. Like do that. I think I have to go in a much more subtle direction. And I think it's going to be really fun to have a Green Lantern on Earth that will, hopefully as we go along, we'll start interacting with superheroes and start interacting with the DC universe at large. There's been so much of Green Lantern just interacting with space aliens and all that stuff. It's going to be really fun to see, him clock Gorilla Grodd or something. You know what I mean? Like, come down and be like, oh, when's the last time we saw Green Lantern versus, X, Y, Z, on Earth? I think that's going to be kind of neat.
Well, that was going to be my next question. I was like, since Hal's going to be so down on Earth, are we going to see a bunch of old school villains or some new villains?
Yeah. I mean, that's my intention. Nice. I also, there's a little bit of like a discussion between me and Hall about like, oh, I want to bring this. He's like, I don't want that. And I'm like, like there's a little bit of that, like I want it to be this. And I'm like, I understand that, but we also have to have some of this, And again, it's all couched in that, like, I got to get to this because I don't want people to leave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So hopefully there's enough comedy and romance and adventure that people will keep reading to find out what's happening in the mystery. But those are the worries as a writer. You're like, I do it because I love it and I'm writing it and I'm having so much fun doing it. And then you send it out and you're like, I hope people, I don't know, I mean, that's what the Flash has been. Literally every time I've turned in a Flash, I'm like, I just don't know if anybody will like this. And at one point I was at Comic-Con and it was with the 2022 annual. And one of the editors came over there like, I don't know what you're doing, man. I'm like, yeah. I go, me either, man. And he's like, in this entire annual, you don't have the Flash be the Flash. I'm like, huh, yeah, that's crazy. Like, I was like, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. I don't know. So there's an element of like, I just see something. I'm very excited about it. I write it and you put it out there and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work. And you just kind of hope for the best. And I just, like I said, I've been very fortunate because the fans haven't turned on me yet. Not yet. It'll happen. I just right now.
Hey, I told you I enjoyed the run, and while we've been talking, one of our friends, Russell, left a comment, said, "Have absolutely loved Jeremy's Flash run. Big shoes to fill after Williamson, but Jeremy definitely succeeded." So
that's kind. I mean, listen, Williamson, obviously, Josh, he did that forever, and then there was this gap between him and then when I picked up. And man, I mean, he's been so kind and such a cheerleader for me. And talk about a guy who added so many toys to the toy box. Oh my gosh. And it was interesting to go back and look at his run and just be thinking about, oh man, he's so smart in so many ways that he made every few issues an event, a Flash event. And it was and I'm sitting here with stupid wrestlers, you know. He's on Eclipse of Fighting Gym, you know. It's like, what's happening? Like Dr. Fate is like, look behind you, turn the book upside down. Like complete lunatic.
He's working for Mr. Terrific.
I know. Listen, Mr. Terrific is one of those things where, like, that was such a surprise to me. We've been going on forever. I know. But I wanted to get Ted Kord because I'm such a fan. And they were like, you cannot have Ted Kord. You know, they're doing a blue and gold book. And I was like, okay, who can I have? You know, and it was like, oh, you can have Mr. Terrific. And I was like, oh, the Vulcan guy? You know, like in my head, he's always so serious and blah, 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 blah. And so that was the thing where it was like, I've had so much fun with Mr. Terrific, in my mind, transforming him into Buckaroo Banzai, like you know, like, and the fact that he owns like a potato chip factory and like, you know, he has his own streaming network. Like I have a list. I have a running list on my desktop of all the different things that he owns that feeds into his empire of like labs. And then he's just like super cool. So when he comes into the Jiffy Lube that he owns, you know, the Jiffy Lube, and he's like, you're fired, Wally. You know, it's like, I got a better job for you and we have free lunch. You know, it's like all that stuff to me is like hilarious. And like it made Michael, like, it was just a weird thing where I'm suddenly like, oh my gosh, I really like Mr. Terrific now, where I didn't think, I didn't really know him and I didn't really like him beforehand. But as I kept writing him and giving a little bit of like, just funny little things, and you would see him in the background. You would see Wally eating like Terrific chips or whatever. Like you would have the cereal that's the Terrific stuff, and then it's the same thing with the kids. Like I was like, oh, I don't know. I'm one of those guys. If I see kids in a movie, I'm like, ugh, you know. Yeah. And then it's like suddenly I'm writing them, and I'm like, I'm trying to think when it was really funny to me. Obviously, one of my favorite is that I wrote an issue with my daughter, and it's the one where they go to the daddy-daughter dance. Oh, yeah. My daughter and I had just gone to a daddy-daughter dance, and they were supposed to credit her on the book, but legally they couldn't, blah, blah, blah. And but my daughter had drawn all the villains, all the nightmares, and we sent those in, and the artist, Christian Duce, like, he like did them all. It was such an amazing experience with my daughter. Wow. And I was like, oh my gosh, the way I'm writing her is obviously a lot like my oldest daughter. And then after that, you know, I was still like, oh, I love her. She's funny. But then when I was writing Jay and his action log, I was like, oh no, I fall in love with these kids in a way that is so funny to me because, and then added in, you know, Animal Man's daughter. Oh yeah. And then it was like Maxine, and then I was just like, this is hilarious. Like, and then it's like, who remembers Maxine? And the people are like, we do. And then I was like, oh crap. And then it was like, oh, how did she get her powers back? And I'm like, now I know in my head how I think she got her powers back. At the time, I was like, she doesn't have powers anymore. Like, you know, I'm like, oh shoot, you know. But that to me is super fun. Those are like storytelling moments because like Jay not having his powers because sharing them with Irie hurts him. Mm-hmm. That became such a cool story point that led to the surge that we had given Wally from the first arc. That we're just like, what are we doing with this thing? And the Spectre's like, you got to give it to your son. Like, hello. You know, and so then it all kind of worked in a cool way, and it just and I love that. I love sometimes you just throw it out there and you're like, I hope this makes sense, and then you try to make it make sense. So,
so you're you said you're trying to get comfortable writing. How number 1 comes out in May. I assume you're probably up to number 3 or 4 on scripting. How's it feeling so far?
So here's where I'm trying to figure out what has been announced and not. I will tell you the first 2 issues are done, and I really like where it's headed. I'm being so careful. I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it in terms of I really like who Hal is, and I think that he's more thoughtful than I thought he would be, and also I think he's owning up to the fact that he left home for so long. And like, what does that mean? And did he make the right decision to come back? And that's like one of those things. Like, you move back to your hometown. Like, well, should I have done this? I don't know if I should have done this. Up there, I was somebody. Down here, I'm a schlub with $13 in his checking account. It's it's a question, but how has the most willpower? So it's like, he's not going to sit there and like cry about it. You know what I mean? He's that guy that's like, he's not a maudlin guy. He's more, if he wants to do something, he's going to do it because that's who he is. But I think he has to have the right reason to do it. So yeah, I'm enjoying it. I can't tell you enough how Zermanico's artwork is just, we're not worthy type thing. And I love the fact that he gives so much, like, hey, let's do it this way, or can I do this? And he can do those real subtle moments, and he can do the romance and the comedy because he knows how to do facial features, and he gets what I'm doing in that regard. And then when you play that as like, oh, here's soap opera drama, whatever, and it leads into these big like action moments, and you see them. It's actually Jeff said to me because when we saw Zermanico doing Flashpoint Beyond, it was like everything he sent us was so incredible. And so when Jeff found out that I was doing Green Lantern, he was just such a big cheerleader. Like, oh yeah, Jimmy, yeah, that's great, and he said, "Who's your artist?" And I go, "Zermanico." He's like, "Oh my god," and he was very much like, think about lower panel count because he's so good. Think about letting him sing, let him have bigger palettes to draw and do stuff. So I'm trying, but I'm also a wordy dude. So, it's a catch-22. But
well, is this you've got a backup story. Is it a 20-page, 22-page?
22-page.
22-page. All right,
Green
awesome.
Lantern, yeah. Mm-hmm. And then, I don't know.
Backup.
8 or 10, right? I don't know.
Something
exactly.
like that, yeah. I think that's what they've been doing, yeah.
So it's, these are little thick guys, thick boys. Mm-hmm. And yeah, like I said, and then obviously we've got all this other stuff coming out in DC, and then I've got another cool DC announcement at some point.
Oh, see, you're doing a good job. That's when they start throwing 20 books at you.
I wish. Listen, I told him, I was like, you give me it all. I'm like, I'll write anything. I mean, I'm literally that guy. It doesn't matter what they want to write. And the funny thing is, it's still not like my bread and butter. The things that I really love, one of the things I love about DC Comics, and it was one of the reasons that I got Batman Soul of the Dragon, the movie I did with Bruce Timm, and the Mortal Kombat movies, the animated movies, was because I would not shut up about martial arts, but specifically DC martial arts. Oh. And I love DC martial arts. I love their, Dixon kind of started off, Gail Simone picked it up, and they're such a cool, rich, just awesome characters, whether it's Sensei or Bronze Tiger, Richard Dragon, or all those things. And then, I'm a huge Cassandra Cain fan, and it's like, I would love to get my hands on that toy box because I love that stuff,
Next 6 months he's gonna be announced he's writing a Bat book, kids.
Oh my God. I mean, they are not stupid enough to let me into that arena. I'd be like, you can't get me out now. It's so funny. And but the other piece of it, the thing I didn't know I wanted, and the thing that I didn't know that I'm excited that I love as much as I do, but of course I love it because I loved Young Justice. Mm-hmm. I love when Jeff was writing. I love when Peter David was writing it. I love younger superheroes, obviously, because I've been building out those characters. And I announced on my Twitter that issue 797 we're going to have Super Sons in that issue, and I'm like I like desperately want younger superheroes because they don't exist really anymore. Mm-hmm. And I would love to do some kid-centric thing too, because I find it hilarious. And when I did the Super Sons movie, I had such a fun time writing that Super Sons movie. I was like, oh my gosh, I wish I could write more kid stuff.
Okay, next question. What is the going bribe to get drawn into an issue of Green Lantern with us meeting Hal Jordan?
You know what's funny is I have an idea for fans that is going to be kind of my version of the no prize if I can get it off the ground and if I last long enough. You know what I mean? Like if the book lasts long enough, then I will implement it. You know, but I have to get to that. That might be a good backup rather than just sticking people in.
Oh, here's a page from the Book of Oa, kids.
Yeah, exactly.
Looking forward, if you're on Green Lantern for a year or 2 years or 5 years, what you're looking at it from the beginning now. What do you feel like will be a successful run for you?
I think people liking Hal Jordan.
Okay.
No, I'm serious. I mean, seriously, it's a weird thing where like people love their Green Lanterns. I think it's great, but I think Hal has like a weird shadow over him, and some of that is just because of the parallax thing, even though that's been explained. But there's a certain element of like, I don't think at the time that he was written, he was a little bit of a cipher for whoever was reading him, and he was a little bit larger. He was just great. Oh yeah, this, that, and the other. And he comes back and he's rough and tumble and all that stuff. And it's like, but I actually want people to like him as a person. And that to me would be successful. It's like, oh, I really like Hal now, rather than, ugh, Hal. You know, and like, you know, there's a little of that, right? There's a little bit of people like, I like Hal because, he's the greatest Green Lantern. It's like, yeah, I get that. But like, if you try to nail them down on his personality and stuff, it's harder. It's harder to nail down. And I want people to really like him as a character, like really like him as a superhero. I'd be like, oh, remember that time that Hal did this thing and he saved these people and he did this? And it's like, yeah, he's super cool, because sometimes he becomes a butt of a joke where there's like All-Star Batman. I think it was a great gag where they painted that entire room gold and they were like making fun of him. And you're like, oh man, that's messed up, And it's like, they do that sometimes, but his secret power is that like, he the ring didn't come to Batman. You know what I mean? Like the ring didn't come in. And he's been out there saving the Earth before it even gets to the Earth. Like, you know what I mean? Like, his vision is so much bigger than I think some other people. So now he has to shrink that vision a little bit and look at what's around him and remember what he was fighting for to begin with. And that was something like in the Flash that I really want to make apparent that Wally was the boots on the ground. But Wally saw it all from the ground level, and that became a really important facet to who the Flash was in terms of the world. So where's Green Lantern, fit into that? And it'll be interesting.
Cool, very cool.
All right, I think we're gonna let this man go. Jeremy, we've enjoyed this.
Thank you.
Oh yeah.
If you want to come back when Green Lantern 1 comes out, or if you want to get a couple issues deep, or hell, I'll talk Flash 800. I know. I'm gonna be like,
well, let's get further down the line. I got a list, but you guys are, I think, the first one I've talked to since I've taken over. I mean, so
nice.
Because I was going to say, I mean, you're welcome to come back. Because, like you said, I mean, we gotta get these people to start spending their money on these books.
That's right. Yeah, you're decades. Let's do it.
All right.
Thank you so much.
All right. One more thing before Lilith, my other co-host, kills me. Can I get a drop of you saying this is Jeremy Adams and you are listening to the Capes and Lunatics podcast?
Okay, here we go. 3, 2, 1. This is Jeremy Adams, and you're listening to the Capes and Lunatics podcast.
Yes, perfect.
Nice. Awesome.
All right. Yes, thank you so much, sir. I know we're going to enjoy what you have in store for Hal Jordan. The Flash is already great, so thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you so much.